For 10 years, we've had sorafenib as the only approved agent in liver cancer. There's been great efforts to improve on something better in the front line, but also probably the largest unmet medical need historically has been, what do we do when patients really are progressing on sorafenib? And you know, Jordi, you were one of the leads in the RESORCE study, the study that was the basis for the registration and approval of the first drug in second line, regorafenib. Regorafenib, like sorafenib, is a multi-targeted kinase inhibitor. It has a little broader activity in certain pathways. You had done a phase 2 study that, in a single arm, relatively small study, showed some activity. Can you tell us about the patients who went into RESORCE and how that might impact our management of patients in frontline, let alone second line?
So sorafenib has already been explained, and regorafenib looks from the outside similar in mechanism, but it has some specific differences that make it a bit more powerful, and in addition targeting other targets, we felt in the phase 2 that we needed to confirm that it was safe. And we did an initial study that collected, as you said, a limited number of patients, but to prove that patients that had tolerated sorafenib and would receive regorafenib, even if it was potentially more powerful, it would be safe. This was the case, the signal was there. It may have a special sensitivity to detect signals, and the decision was to move forward into a phase 3. We decided to do it in patients that were tolerant to sorafenib to avoid the risks that could have happened in naive patients, as was the case, for example, for sunitinib. That was also more powerful, but it induced liver failures and prime death. So we said, perfect, we do definitions of tolerance, and tolerance was defined in an arbitrary manner as for the last 28 days to have received at least 20 days of half the dose of sorafenib. This helps to sort out those that would not tolerate the drug, those that are, let's say, less committed to adhere to treatment, sorted out the good physicians that were able to adjust. And one of the important persons in the oncology teams, and has not been mentioned, I was willing to say that, are nurses. Nurses are key to educate, filter the consults, make sure that everybody is aligned, and this is one of the usual missing in the multidisciplinary teams. So having said that, we had a time between the last pill of sorafenib and the first pill of rego that I think has to be maintained, at least 2 weeks. And in that way, we had the trial that was quite clean in a well-defined population. Comparing rego versus placebo, we had a 30% increase in the life expectancy. Safety was there. We did not have major, let's say, challenges. Compared to colorectal, only 10%.
You said safety is there, and I think the approval of regorafenib in liver cancer is relatively new.
Yeah.
Regorafenib has been used in the colorectal space and GI stromal tumor space. Can you comment specifically on safety in a liver cancer population?
The side effects of rego are arterial hypertension, again, the hand-foot skin reaction, a bit of diarrhea, a bit of asthenia, but they can be managed with those adjustments. There is the concept in oncology that it is toxic, because in colorectal patients, it was felt toxic. Colorectal patients are patients that have suffered several lines of treatment, interventions, and so on, so they're a bit more ill and burnt out. In liver cancer, only 10% of the patients had to stop treatment and interrupt it because of adverse events related to the drug. What does it mean? That it was well tolerated and they can be dose adjusted. And the same happened in GIST. So it's not that it's a mistake in liver cancer, it's probably that we have to pay attention to the population.
So that's great. Dr. Marshall, I'm going to close this segment with your comments, because we presented at the GI ASCO meeting a few months ago that for patients who were on the RESORCE study, from the time they started sorafenib, and this is obviously a subset of patients who were on the study, to the time of death, their survival was 26 months, a long time for patients with advanced liver cancer. So now that we have a continuum of treatment for advanced liver cancer, does that change when you refer patients for systemic treatment as an interventional radiologist?
I think it does. I think it makes me aware that there is something else that can be done. And so I should act quickly to get those patients back to their oncologist and start those treatments. So I think absolutely. it needs to be better defined when I should stop and when systemic therapy should start.
And to your point you mentioned earlier, I think it's an important point, not only to think about their tumor, but their liver function. Because if a patient gets declining liver function from extra procedures, then that can compromise their ability to get proven active agents.